start the regular council meeting. I call the regular council meeting for Tuesday, September 3rd, 2019 to order. Confirmation of the agenda that the council of the Township of North Huron accept the amended agenda for the September 3rd, 2019 council meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? I have Anita, second. I have Paul. All in favor? Carries. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll move on. Public comments. There's nobody here. Consent agenda that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts the consent agenda items 5.1.1 and further that the council Township of North Huron hereby receives consent agendas 5.1.2 and 5.3.4 for information. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin. Do I have a seconder? Chris, would anybody like to speak to anything on the between 5.11 and 5.34? I'm going to speak to 5.3.1, the labor force update. For those in council and those in the greater audience that don't know, Dwayne and myself have been at the table for this from day one. We put a lot of time, the Township of North Huron has put a lot of time into this, even though only one of the factories is actually located in North Huron. We are making progress. I reached out to an old business colleague of mine, Kali Ramel, who was at one time the MPP and assistant to Information Minister. And I'm told that West Cast has contacted him, and they've already met with people from London that can help them with the situation. They've also met with people from, I believe it's Kitchener, that are helping them. We have a really big problem with housing. You can get them, but London's a long way on a bus just to work 10 hours to go home, so we're having quite a time keeping anybody, which boils down to our problem with housing. And it is not only our problem with housing, it's an Ontario problem with housing. But we are concerned with North Huron and the factories around it in North Huron and our neighbors around us too. So I want to commend Dwayne and the staff for all the work that they've been putting through on that, because they have been doing a lot on it. I'm also going to comment on 5.3.2, the Energy Open House in Exeter. I'm going to go to that if anybody wants to ride. I've got room for 3 others. If anybody decides they want to go, give me a shout, and we can ride together. And that's it for that one. So I have a mover and a seconder. Seeing no other questions or comments, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Public meetings and hearings, we have none, which is 6. Reports, 7.1, the Clerk's Department, 7.11, the Huron County Official Plan 5-year Review Project Update. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive the presentation titled Huron County Official Plan 5-year Review Project Update, dated September 3rd, 2019 by Laura Simpson, Huron County Planner for information purposes. Do I have a mover? Oh, Laura, would you like to speak to that first? Sure.
Okay, so good evening, Council. So as some of you may know, Huron County Planning and Development Department is undertaking our 5-year official plan review for the county official plan. So provincial legislation requires that every 5 years an official plan for a county or a municipality is reviewed and given a thorough look through the document to make sure that its policies are up to date with provincial legislation, provincial goals, as well as local and community goals and directions, and are in line with the vision that is set for the future. So we're planning on a 25-year horizon. This was recently upped from a 20-year period. So we're looking farther into the future and addressing what issues need to be given attention now to ensure success in the long run. So this presentation is an update on where we are in the process and give an overview of the policy changes that we're giving attention to during the official plan review. So where we are in the project timeline, this started back in January 2019. And the public consultation component of it started on May 8th, and that was with the special county council meeting. That's a meeting required by the Planning Act to begin any public consultation with an official plan review. So in addition to that, we also held a community consultation workshop with a facilitator, Gord McIntosh. So if any of you were able to attend, it was a well-attended event. We had over 90 people sign in the evening, which was considered a big success by our department. A lot of people came to talk about our planning issues and topics within the official plan. So the setup that we had this evening was we took specific topics within the official plan that affects all of Huron County, and we had people sit at designated tables, and then us, the planners, acted as facilitators and moved those topics throughout the room so that people got a chance to touch on each topic as it came by their table. And we collected ideas, we identified weaknesses within the county as well as its strengths and goals. So it was a successful evening that left us with a lot of information that we added to our policy review. Throughout June to now, we've been doing kind of a pop-up strategy in an attempt to get people kind of out in the wild, and we could approach them and have them have more frank discussions in a different change of scenery, basically, than your standard workshop. So we went to the Dungannon Rodeo, the Clinton Fair, and the Huron County Plowing Match. So that was kind of throughout the summer. And I think it went pretty well. Most people don't head out to those with the intention of talking about policy. But I think it went well, and at least they said that anyone who saw that was friendly at least. So now where we are is we're doing public open houses. So this is also a required component of an official plan review. So you host open houses, and the ones that we have coming up are these. So we have one in Clinton, Exeter, and here in Wingham. So these will be on 3 separate dates throughout September this month. And we're doing them in a traditional public open house, so people are welcome to show up. It's a drop-in style, and they can sit down, talk with a planner. We'll have the policy amendments available for your review, and then we also will have information boards and maps as well. We're also adding a bit of a workshop component to it so that we have planners at specific tables, again with the topics from the official plan, so that if you have a concern specifically about one issue, so for example housing or agriculture, you can go talk about just that issue rather than getting into a whole other host of things you may not have an interest in. So we are inviting all of council to attend. So probably the Wingham one is the easiest for people here to get to. So that'll be on the 25th from 7 to 9 p.m. here at the Hot Stove Lounge in the complex. So the sections of the official plan are agriculture, community services, economy, extractive resources, natural environment, and settlement patterns. So I'll break down a bit of each of those about the policy changes we're doing. And these are the proposed amendments for the main topics. A lot of them are similar to the sections. One particular one that we actually got a lot of conversation and opinions about during our workshop back in May was climate change and active transportation. So that was something we didn't have a lot of experience with it from policy level. So we have a new climate change specialist at the county, Lily, and she's been an invaluable resource to actually provide some policy direction and give ideas on best practices elsewhere that we can incorporate. So agriculture, a lot of this is making the distinction between what we want to have at a broad county level and what we want to incorporate at a local official plan and allow flexibility on. So this would include local official plans, so the North Huron official plan to set policy for on-farm diversified uses as well as agriculture-related uses and their relationship to MBS. So the minimum distance separation that they would be required from barns and whether it would be limiting, flexible, and what impact would be considered from that. Policies in the county official plan would acknowledge residential character of surplus severances. So that would be that they are residential in nature because it's the house being severed off from the farm and that existing agriculture is permitted in natural environment. So those are kind of the broad scope. There is more specific policies. And for the economic side of it, acknowledgement of the serious labor shortage. So this is where we did have a lot of input from members of the Huron County Economic Development Department. They sat with us and gave some examples. So this labor shortage, a housing shortage, they're tied in together. We have the Huron-Perth United Way contribute with recognition of the living wage and attainable housing, which ties into a very large housing discussion that we had and still continues. Natural environment was also one. It's actually not having a significant portion of a change because we are allowing with the natural environment update, that to come down to a local official plan level, so that it's at the municipal level to do a more direct scope on what's appropriate for their official plan. At the county level, we would be recognizing Lake Huron for recreation and drinking water, as well as protecting it as a natural resource, and an incorporation of the county council direction that natural environment adjacent lands to a feature such as a woodlot would be a 50-meter buffer, rather than previously it was higher than that. So this new one is climate change and active transportation. So this would be looking at incorporating new methods to add active transportation throughout the county and where its strengths are. So this would be like former road allowances that could be encouraged for active transportation. We do have some former rail trails that are being used to great success. So what else similar to that? Putting in policies for encouraging renewable energy, conservation of energy, and also passive houses as well. And then housing. This was probably the largest conversation we've had so far, so there's a few bullet points on this into the next slide as well. And basically just acknowledging that across the county-wide there is a need for it. So the REIT has discussed this several times, and for good measure, because it's something we're hearing from all sides, and it's coming through not just in urban areas, but agriculture as well. It's coming through the economic side of it, so that there are houses for workers. So we're looking at really increasing flexibility and what kind of extremes can we push that can help housing establish here in the county in the future. So if we establish flexibility at the county level in the official plan, what kind of innovative solutions or strategies can a local official plan incorporate to help housing establish in urban areas? So these are some of the ideas that we were looking at. Particularly on this next slide, one that I think will be beneficial countywide is a residential intensification guideline. So we talk a lot about density, and that's fitting more houses in a smaller space so we can get more people in a smaller area, because and some, particularly for example Wingham, is landlocked, so if we don't have the space to grow, where can we fit more people? So the residential intensification guidelines would help developers and be an asset to them so that we can provide them assistance in saying, here's how you can fit more houses within a limited space or on limited services or something like that. So that's something that we're looking at creating to assist any future developer. And then provincial direction is putting a lot on additional units. So that's changed from secondary units, but that's when you have an existing residence and you're looking at adding more units for more people to live. So there's a lot of focus on that, and that's coming down from the province as well. And yeah, so that is basically the overview of the policies that we're doing. We do have it available on the Huron County website as well, and will be available at all those open houses. And this slide here is again those dates, times, and locations.
Any questions or comments from the councillors?
Yeah, my only question is, the open houses are all the same, it's not all the areas, it's not like if you go to the Clinton one or the Exeter one, it's all about that area, they're all the same.
Yes, we're doing countywide in each.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? None, seeing none, thank you very much. I believe there you go. So that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives a presentation titled Huron County Official Plan 5-Year Review Project Update dated September 3rd, 2019 by Laura Simpson, Huron County Planner, for the information purposes. Do I have a mover? Trevor, and I have Paul seconding. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes. 7.1.2, proposed amendment to the North Huron Community Improvement Plan, CIP. Laura, did you want to speak to this one again?
Oh, yes, let's do that. The last one, so this one is hopefully short. I've been working with the North Huron Economic Development Committee about doing an amendment to the existing community improvement plan for North Huron. So a bit of a background is that North Huron adopted a community improvement plan, also known as the CIP, last November 2018. And a large portion, and they did that with the establishment of some money from the province, which was great to start off with, so that we were able to see some interest from applicants right away, have some successful applications that are able to be given grant money, and participate in the commercial facade grant program. Then in June 2019, Belinda Wick-Graham, she's the Economic Development Manager of the town of Minto, came to the North Huron Economic Development Committee meeting, and she gave she presented via Skype, but she gave a great presentation on what their community improvement plan looks like and the successes that they've had from it. So they actually have multiple programs within their CIP, and the municipality is seeing with the implementation of the facade, signage, and structural grant programs a huge return on the value of the dollars that they've invested in those programs. So they've revitalized commercial streets, created new businesses, and renovated and restored existing interiors of structures that they have in their downtown locations. So this motivated the Economic Development Committee to do a similar amendment and incorporate a similar program to the North Huron CIP. So this amendment would be that there is the incorporation of a structural grant program. So the commercial facade grant program is when people are doing renovations to the exterior of their buildings. This would include lighting, windows, signage, as far up as things like masonry, trim, something to improve the outside look for attracting businesses inside. The structural grant program is changing the interior of a building. So key components of that are improving accessibility to a building, safety, energy efficiency, and increasing mixed use of residential and commercial units that can exist together within a structure. So Town of Minto demonstrated they've had great success with this. It's a competitive program. They have people who put forward very high quality applications because they know the rewards, and the town is seeing the benefits of that. So the amendment through the North Huron CIP would add in that program with the existing facade program, and would come back to council for their consideration.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Laura? I'm going to actually start, I sit on the Economic Development Committee, and I'm a big supporter of this. You'll see a lot of main streets are falling apart, but you will not see that in Minto. George Bridge has done a fantastic job as mayor over there and pushed this through, and so is the girl that I'll never remember her name. She presented to our council, if you recall, just a few weeks ago. This is something that will help our main streets, help our housing problem, because we have a lot of empty apartments above these stores. So I see this as a win-win for our community, and with that, I'll open it up to the council. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
Because we don't see or hear a lot of the comments from what people are requesting as it relates to the CIP application, has there been a lot of potential need from this as it relates to the request of what this application is, and well, I'm not going to pull in it because I don't see any structural in it, I understand the benefit, and I understand Minto has a lot more I guess, background or feedback in order to determine whether it's successful. And not everything's successful in every community. So I guess my question is that, have we seen the request or the need from people applying to the CIP that are looking for this structural component to it? Or are we just adding because we think that it's successful in Minto, then let's see it in North Huron and it'll be a success?
I'll let Laura start with that.
So I'm working with, in addition to the Economic Development Committee, the BIAs as well.
Yep.
So this Thursday I'm meeting with the Wingham BIA to get their feedback as well about this addition. There was a lot of excitement with the initial CIP, and it did take some explaining, to say it's just the exterior, because people did ask about what if, if there's other things inside, particularly accessibility measures as well. So that there's, in addition to just the exterior, can we do interior stuff as well? So it has come up during previous conversations, but really I think talking to the BAs will be a good way to get a level of interest as well.
Laura, can I just ask, did we use all the money up yet for the exteriors, or do we?
No, so we still have some money that was given from the province. We're actually in our third intake period, so we had two that left us with a chunk of money left. And now the third intake period will end at the end of this September, so people can still get their applications in. So it will still just be under the commercial facade program, because the structural one obviously won't be in place yet. But if this does go through and is the additional program, then if there's any money left over, applicants can apply to both programs, or either or, if they're both open and available. Any money, once that provincial funds are used up, would have to come from North Huron, so if that would be a request probably from the Economic Development Committee for a budget consideration.
And I'll just follow up with that. At the Economic Development Committee, Jordan Hodgins went door to door in Blythe and talked to every store owner in Blythe because they weren't participating too much. And I think, even in Wingham here, I think they finally went out and talked to people because they didn't know this existed. But anybody that's used it, it's definitely helped clean the main street up. So it's a matter of, again, like everything else, it's here getting the information out. And the Economic Development Committee is so strong with this, they went door to door to let people know it exists and can use it for the third intake, right, Laura? Got that right?
There's
Yes.
one.
Questions or comments then? Go ahead, Paul.
You read, it's all right, the counselor to attend the BIA meeting or to hear what they're looking for or, is that
Yeah.
possible or not?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All BIAs are public meetings. We can, any of us can go to any of them and listen to them.
Those Thursday at 8 at Hosford Farm.
Go ahead.
When someone, a store owner is selected, is there a time period that they have to complete their job?
18 months. You have 18 months from when they sign the
Okay.
contract.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Kevin.
Through your, what portion of it would be the CFP or the CFP would be used, which one of those would be used for accessibility? If you're talking like a facade, you might change windows, but that might just be a door change.
Yes.
Does that fall into the structural or into the?
I believe something like a door is, like if a door was being widened, for example, that could fall under the structural, because it does include things like, like basically anything structural getting larger.
I'm just thinking more of a, either a ramp or a level entrance
Oh,
change.
that would be the facade.
That would be under the facade?
So this, Kevin, just touching on that again, this is going to be a great help for small business owners as I think it's 2022, we have to have accessibility in all buildings. 2025. So as we move closer to that, something like this is gonna help them because we all know that some of these Main Street buildings, it's gonna be a challenge to make them accessible. They've been there 150 years and it's, you know, even washrooms and stuff like that. So this, again, this will be helping them with, you know, a lot of places have the washrooms downstairs, that won't be allowed as time gets closer. Not everybody's gonna wait till 2025, we could jump on this. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none? I'm going to read the motion that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accept the recommendation of the North Huron Economic Development Committee to amend the North Huron Community Improvement Plan and add a direct grant for structural work program. And further, that the Council direct Laura Simpson, planner, to advertise in the applicable newspapers for a public meeting to consider the amendment. Do I have a mover? I have Christopher, and I have Rick second. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Animal control bylaw update, 7.1.3. We're gonna have Carson speak to this before we read the, questions and answers. Go ahead, Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the animal control bylaw sets out the responsibilities and standards for dog owners and kennel operators within North Huron. And the current animal control bylaw that's in place was passed in 2008, so it requires an update. And so, as was seen in the report, there were 4 types of changes that were made to the bylaw, and every change that was made was reflected in highlighted in green in the draft bylaw that was attached to the report as well. So the first change was in regard to wording related to fees and payments. So in the current animal control bylaw, there's various schedules attached that outline the fees and they outline the penalties. But these are also contained in our North Huron fees and charges bylaw as well. So staff found it prudent to change in this update to amend the wording in the animal control bylaw to just refer to the fees and charges bylaw. So that way when say a fee change occurs, only the fees and charges bylaw will have to be updated, and that ensures that there will be consistency between the 2 bylaws. Also related to that, another change was made to provide more clarity to the fee collection process, as a clause was added that states fees may be collected in the same manner as municipal property taxes after 30 days of a written demand for payment by the township. The second change was updates regarding guide dogs. So North Huron, like most other municipalities, doesn't charge the registration and license fee to individuals who require guide dog services. So now a clause has been added to the bylaw that says if they can provide the appropriate documentation, North Huron will waive the registration and license fee for this. The third change is regarding the responsibility to care for dogs. So in the current bylaw, it sets out that those who own or operate a kennel must ensure a clean and sanitary environment for their dogs, but this same responsibility isn't transferred to dog owners. So section 3.1 of the new draft bylaw, it pulls from a clause that many other neighboring municipalities have, including South Bruce and Huron-Kinloss, and it just keeps that consistent responsibility to provide a clean and sanitary environment for all dog owners and not just kennel owners. And then the final changes are technical and clarity changes, so that's just updates that reflect the current state of North Huron. So for example, some of the wording in the bylaw was changed to reflect the fact that the Wingham Police Service no longer exists and that it's solely the OPP across North Huron.
Questions or comments for Chris, or for Carson? Go ahead, Trevor.
Carson, does the word guide dog, is it inclusive of service dogs? Is a guide dog the same as a service dog? Is my question, because I guess the question is, to me it's not. And the question I would have is, if we're giving somebody who has a requirement for a guide dog, and they have to apply for a license, but it's then free, my argument would be if you have a service dog, which it would in essence be, particularly for a medical reason or whatever, I would think that it should be the same across the board, in my mind. But I want to understand whether guide dog and service dog were identical, and if not, then I think we should include service dog as well.
Yep, I don't have the definition in front of me right now, but if that's a change that council wants to see made, I can definitely develop a definition of service dog as well and include that into the bylaw as well before it comes back for to be passed.
Anita, did you?
No, I had the same thing, like service dog for people with like epilepsy and autism and all kinds of alarm things. So service dog would be
Go ahead, Chris.
guidance service.
Sorry, yeah, I didn't
It
catch you.
says here for the definition of a guide dog, means a dog which serves as a guide or leader for a physically, visually, or hearing impaired person, performs searches or rescue functions, which has been specifically trained for the purpose. So that's in the bylaw.
So I would say then a service dog is not the same as that.
That's right.
Because a service dog doesn't necessarily do just those things, and it's not for a physically impaired or a hearing impaired person. It could be for stress, it could be for a whole bunch of things.
And I would agree with that, Trevor.
I think we just need to be
Yep.
clear at what they are, because if we're going to require somebody who is a guide dog to provide paperwork and an acknowledgement that it is considered a guide dog in order for the fee to be free, somebody should have to do the same thing as relates to a service dog and respect for the same free service. I think it's only fair if they're putting up the service to have it because they need it for a medical reason or whatever the case may be.
Any other questions or comments?
And then the meeting,
Yeah.
just make it simple.
So I have one other question then. Did we talk earlier about tenants? So if a tenant has a dog and is not taken care of, et cetera, and then we said we're going to send a bill to the landlord? See where I'm going with that? If you own the dog and it's your house, we're gonna tax it on, put on your tax bill. But that guy that owns the building right beside us has 3 apartments, and one of them, he's got a bad tenant to begin with, and they're not taking care of their dog, and we're after them. Don't think we wanna really send.
Yeah, so through you, your worship, so it's tied to the dog's owner.
Okay.
It's so dog owners have a responsibility to come to the township and register their dog, and that is tied to that. If it's that dog who's causing the disturbance, it's tied to that dog owner.
Okay, it doesn't end up on the taxes of a person who owns $6.
No,
Okay,
specifically to the dog owner.
so do we just wanna let this one go and you're gonna bring it back, or do I have to have a motion to?
The motion as is, it has to come back to be
Okay.
read for a bylaw anyway, so
Okay.
the motion.
As it is, okay, so I'm gonna read the motion. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of the clerk dated September 3rd, 2019 regarding an animal control bylaw update for information purposes. And further, the council direct the clerk to prepare a bylaw to repeal and replace the current animal control bylaw for the September 16th, 2019 council meeting. Mover. He's gonna change it.
I'll move it.
Trevor moves. Paul's gonna second. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries. 7.1.4, live streaming technology options. Carson, I'm going to get you to talk to this one first.
Thank you, your worship. So as council's aware, as Reed Bailey mentioned at the last August 12th, the free program that we use to live stream our council meetings has been discontinued, so now the township we lack the technology to live stream our council and committee meetings. So while there's no legislative requirement to live stream our council and committee meetings, it is in the township's procedure bylaw that North Huron may live stream the meetings, and it was determined that it is a widely used service by the public. So as outlined in the staff report, the past 4 live streamed regular and special council meetings, as of the August 29, 2019 date, had viewership numbers of 304 people, 285 people, 3,901 people, and 159 people respectively. So knowing this, a decision of council is required regarding whether live streaming is a practice that council wishes to continue. And if council deems the live streaming of meetings to be an important practice, staff recommend that a long-term plan for live streaming be developed and implemented through eScribe, since North Huron already uses eScribe for its meeting management solution software, and numerous other municipalities, including in this area the town of Goderich, use eScribe as well. If eScribe's live streaming technology is of interest to council, an upset limit of $15,000 would be needed to implement the service, and this estimated amount would include the initial start up and setup costs, the annual fee for the year, and contingency funds to ensure that North Huron has the technological capacity to run the module. And additionally, an annual fee of no greater than $10,000 would need to be considered on an annual basis as part of the budget process. However, this exact amount for the annual fee is dependent on the eScribe webcasting option chosen by council, but it would not exceed $10,000. So ultimately, there's 4 options for council to consider. Council could opt to not live stream or record council meetings going forward, and this would be a cost of $0. Council could opt to continue to record council meetings via the handheld camera that's being used right now, and upload it to the township website after the fact. However, as outlined in the staff report, this requires a significant amount of staff time, which would then not be spent on other projects and tasks. The third option is council could opt to continue to record council meetings via the handheld camera until 2020 and incorporate the eScribe webcasting module cost into the 2020 budget. And this would, of course, have no impact on the 2019 budget. Or council could opt to purchase the eScribe webcasting module and pay for the initial costs using the modernization funds. And this would have no impact on the 2019 budget, but an upset allocation of $15,000 from the modernization funds for this project would be needed. So given the fact that the modernization funds distributed by the province in March are to help small rural municipalities plan, modernize, and improve ways to provide services to their communities in a more efficient manner, it is staff's opinion that the purchase of eScribe webcasting aligns with the purpose and intention of the modernization funds.
Before we open up council, I just want to say that this will be probably one of the few times that I'm going to see the modernization fund that was given to us, that's the $540,000 that we received with no tags. And I don't mind using this for it. I do talk to a lot of people that do watch us. The 4 years I was off council, I watched every meeting. It was my entertainment. And I enjoyed it, and that's why a lot of the stuff that we can talk about, I'm on top of, because I had that opportunity. It'll also open up for younger kids and that, if they watch it, they'll want to get involved in politics, because it's not as dry as everybody thinks. We can have a lot of fun. Just join us, not all us. But this is one time that I've been very clear, I want to use it for infrastructure, not for trucks or wages or computers, but I will this time as the Bree suggest we use the modernization fund for this. And yes, you can convince me another time, Dwayne, but this is one I will go for. I want to open it up to the floor. Who would like to talk? Go ahead, Ken.
Troy and Kitchener and London, all have theirs broadcast on the local community channel. Is that a possibility, Karen, to do? I have no idea whether there's cost involved through them, or whether it's not as a community service. Is it all their listeners are on the channel 12 or channel 1?
I'm not sure if anybody can answer. I'm not sure we have a community. I do know that when I'm at my cottage, I watch King Carden. I can't think of where I've watched Goddard, but I can't think of where I've seen Goddard Council, where it's on. That's a good point, though. I'm not sure if we, can anybody answer whether we have a community?
Whoever your supplier will have community channels. This one, the radio station plays in the background, the ads go by. This one,
Here in
the council
town.
meeting, it's a live meeting, and it's on there.
Let's throw that thought out there. Go ahead, Anita.
That's only if you have cable, and nobody in Swarmers has cable. And I was in a meeting in London at the beginning of the year, and streamlining videos like that is some kind of a accessibility issue, and you're not allowed to do that for us. But I'm not sure about it anymore. There was something that you have to do is through certain channels, otherwise it is, you could be
Right.
and liable for how it's broadcasted.
Other thoughts or comments? Right, Trev?
Well, I think the accessibility factor is a question that we need to make sure that eScribe follows with, because everybody's website needs to be accessible to the hearing impaired and vision impaired and that type of stuff. So, before we do something, the concern was, did what we had before that was free, was it providing that option already? I don't know. To be quite honest with you, as a counselor, I didn't even know that we were using a free service, to be quite honest with you. So, I think we need to understand from an accessibility function, does it meet the Accessibility Act, so that we can ensure that we're not paying $10,000 a year or $15,000 to set it up, and then find out we need to pay another $10,000 to get it accessible. Because I think that's functional or a key part of it, I think, in my mind. The other part of it is that, I'm okay with the $15,000 using it for the modernization fund. I think, in my mind, it was either use the modernization fund or wait till 2020 till the budget to determine whether we can effectively afford basically $25,000 or $15,000 a year, potentially, to live stream for a potential of 500 people, and that's 500 views. That could be the same person 250 times, who knows? So I guess the question is that, are we using it to hit the people that need it? Is that the mode of what they're doing? And I don't know the answer to that. I understand the staff report is saying it's more transparent and it's open. It allows people, but so does the upload. It just takes a lot of staff time, and that's the concern that, I don't like that. I definitely don't like the 8 hours a day to have to convert a file from there to put it onto our website. I don't like that at all. So it'd be a suggestion of it. I think the accessibility factor needs to be encompassed before we give it the green light, in my mind.
Do you have an answer for that, Carson?
Yeah, so, Through your worship, so eScribe is accessible, it includes closed captioning and like, so they specifically work with municipalities, so they have met all those requirements.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Carson, I'm wondering, we are looking at updating our North Huron site now. Vicki, will this, or Carson, will this be compatible with that? Because of course, if we're gonna have the North Huron site, I'd like people to be able to go on there, punch this up. How many times have I said this? Instead of 42 different locations. I'm at North Huron, I can look at December 14th meeting and watch it right off the North Huron site.
Yep, so, myself and Denise have been looking at, what we would need out of a new website and what the requirements are. It would make sure that it's compatible with eScribe and, Laserfish, so that everything would come together as one. And yes, a report for the website would be come back soon, and one of the criteria would be that it is compatible with these things. The other thing with the eScribe module too is it has indexing in it as well, so if you go to a certain part of the minutes, if you want to go to that part of the minutes, if you click on that part of the minutes, it will take you to that part of the video.
That's great. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just wondering, it takes 8 hours to upload our meetings. This is with the existing website. With the new one, are they more user-friendly?
So the reason it takes 8 hours is because of the closed session camera that we're using right now. It creates it in 16-minute slides, and then so you have to combine all the slides, and then they're too big of files, so then you have to combine them all into one, and then you have to convert them into the proper files so that they're the right size before they can be uploaded. So it's,
Is there a better camera, a better system,
I couldn't tell you.
a GoPro?
So originally and I'm with Trevor, I didn't know it was free. Originally, we were just being broadcast as we talked on a free app or whatever you want to call it, and that just disappeared on us. It just quit. We had no say in it because we weren't paying for it anyway. It just, so we had no notice of it quitting or anything, and that's what led us to the camera, because by our bylaws, we're open and transparent, and we are sending it out on video. So that's how that happened.
It won't work well with YouTube.
Yeah. The other question I have is $10,000 a year.
Depending on the module, that would be the maximum.
Okay.
But there are different modules, and it can be something that if council was going to go through this, it would be something that staff are planning to try and negotiate with eScribe to see what's available.
Any other questions before we make this an information purpose? Comments? Seeing none, I'm going to read the motion. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of the clerk dated September 3rd, 2019 regarding live streaming technology options for information purposes. And further, the council authorize the allocation of $15,000 of the modernization fund to pay for the eScribe webcasting module. And further, the Director of Finance be authorized to record the necessary changes to the modernization fund total. Do I have a mover? And yeah, second. I have Christopher. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I call a vote. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. 7.2.1, the Finance Department, the council. I'm going to let Donna speak to this first.
Yes, thank you
Thank you,
very
Bob.
much. So under section 357 of the Municipal Act, it allows for the reduction, cancellation, or refund of taxes if you meet certain criteria. So in this particular case, the applicants have submitted applications under section 357(1)(di), which means that the property had damage or substantially unusable. So as you'll notice in here, this is two different roll numbers. One is for 39575 Belgrave Road, and the second property is 85004 Curry Line. So they're both owned by the same owner, and so that's why the applications are being heard together. So both properties had a barn on them that was subject to wind damage, and so then both of those barns were actually demolished. And the house on the first property, when MPAC reviewed the application, they determined that it was inhabitable, and so then therefore they're getting a reduction of 90% of the structure value of the house, because it actually turns out that house, I'm not familiar with this property, but apparently this house has been vacant for about 30 years, so. Anyway, when you translate the assessment that is attached to those two buildings and the house, the two barns and the house, it turns out to be a reduction for all three pieces of $1,835.59. And under the Municipal Act, the applicant may make representation to council if they're in attendance. I know the attendee tonight, and he is not the applicant, so we'll assume that the applicant doesn't wish to address council. We do budget for $36,400 in the 2019 budget to address this type of application, and we have allocated about $8,200 of that amount thus far this year. So as I said, these applications were sent to MPAC, and they have returned them with recommended assessment. And as finance staff, we don't see anything out of the ordinary on these. The buildings are down and unusable, so I am recommending the amounts as outlined in the report. Does council have any questions?
Questions or comments from council? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, through you, Reeve. Donna, can you, I'm seeing like you're using wind damage as a reason. Do they need to have a reason, or can they just pull a building down willy-nilly?
Yeah, if a person can take a building down for whatever their reason is, and so then therefore there's nothing to tax because there's no building there.
Okay.
But a person, as you know, we went through, over the last few years, there were a lot of farm properties that had a perfectly good home on them, and the houses were pulled down just to avoid paying the taxes. So there's no policing on whether or not the building can come down, but once it's down, then the assessment attributed to that building is addressed through this application process.
Paul?
So would there have to be a demolition permit for the house then?
The house isn't actually, as I said, it didn't come down. It had 90% of its assessment removed. So I don't know if the owner, it would make sense that they would bring it down, but at this point they haven't, but it has been declared uninhabitable, so that's why they're getting 90% off. If they wanted the full 100% off, they would have to bring the house down, so.
Other questions, comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
Don, when they put this application in, does MPAC, for that inhabitable house, does MPAC then adjust their taxation for the future years, or does the applicant have to apply every year for the adjustment?
My understanding is that once it's reduced, that it will appear on next year's roll as 90% of what it is now, but I will definitely check that further.
It's just for
Yeah.
our information, whether we're gonna see this application every year, or
Yes, correct.
or something, or is it potentially for the administration of the application, you just get a building permit and take it down,
Right.
or a demolition permit, I guess.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to read the motion that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the Director of Finance dated September 3rd, 2019 regarding tax refunds under section 357 1D1 of the Municipal Act in the amount of $1,835.59. And further, the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approve adjustments to the collector's roll recommended by the Director of Finance in this report dated September 3rd, 2019. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Okay, I have Trevor and Paul seconds. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I call. All in favor? Carries. Seven point three, Recreation Community Services. 7.3.1, request for laneway closure for the Festival of Lanterns. Vicki, would you like to speak to this one?
Thank you, Your Worship. As council is aware, North Huron is host to a number of community events and festivals each year. One such event is the Festival of Lanterns. The Festival of Lanterns is an annual event held in the fall here in Wingham. The event is part of the Wingham BIA's fall initiative to attract more people to downtown core. The Festival of Lanterns is a family-oriented event. It encourages children and families to use their imagination and creative skills in carving pumpkins, kind of in celebration of the fall season. The carved pumpkins are then displayed on the front lawn of Town Hall. And this year, and shooting at the end of October this year, the event's being held on October 25th. Similar to previous years, for safety reasons, the BIA has requested the closure of the laneways on the north and south side of the Town Hall office here, as well as the blockage of the two parking spaces directly in front of the office here, and has put in requests for some in-kind support for use of hydro, extension cord, and cables and things. Their request is similar to those submitted in previous years and is in compliance with the level of support provided by the township for other special events. Therefore, staff's recommending that council approve their request.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby support the request of the Wingham BIA to host a Festival of Lanterns event in the front lawn of the Town Hall. And further, that Council hereby authorizes the closure of the laneways on the north and south side of the Town Hall building and the blockage of the on-street parking spots located in front of the Town Hall on Friday, October 25th for the Festival of Lanterns events. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin, I have seconded by Paul. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead,
Just concerned
Chris.
about, through you, Reeve, thinking about safety for families and kids, because Josephine's gonna be open.
Through your worship, their concern was more with the traffic trying to turn into the laneways here to access the rear parking area. So that's why, it sounds like, from what I understand, there was an issue with that last year. So they wanted to make sure that that is closed off.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. 7.3.2, request for support of the Rutabaga Festival. Vicki, you're up again.
Thank you, your worship. For the past year, community members in the Village of Blythe have been busy organizing a new community event for 2019. The event being organized is known as the Rutabaga Festival. The event, although the main event is held on October 5th, there will be a kickoff at Cowbell on Friday night, which will be a concert. But the main activities are being held on the 5th at various locations in the village. And it will offer a variety of activities for people of all ages to enjoy. Some of those activities were mentioned in the report. The Rutabaga Organizing Committee, which is actually part of the Blythe Betterment Community Group, has submitted an application to have parts of Gypsy Lane closed for the events. A copy of their application was attached to the report. They requested the closure of Gypsy Lane from Lions Park to King Street and part of Wellington Street from 9 until 5. That's detailed in that application. But they've also asked for the closure of Gypsy Lane from the top of the hill near 25 to King Street from 12 until 3. Again, it's, I believe if you look at your applications and things, it's color coded as to which area is to be closed at what time. The group has also made a few requests for in-kind support, such as the use of the waste receptacles from the community center and disposal at the community center. Staff do not feel there's any issues with that. Road barricades and pylons will be required, and those pylons will be set up and removed by Public Works staff on the day of the event.
Any questions or comments for Vic? Seeing none, I'm going to read the motion. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby support the request of the Rutabaga Festival Organizing Committee to close Gypsy Lane on October 5th, 2019 from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. And further, the council support the request in-kind support as detailed in the report. Do I have a mover? I have Anita, seconder. I have Christopher. Do we have any more questions or comments on this? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. 7.4.1, this is for Public Works and Facilities. This is the tree program. Sean, did you want to speak to this one first?
Yes, please, Your Worship. Basically, the report before council deals with the return of the North Huron Public Tree Program. This is a program that was temporarily parked by the previous council. It involves the ordering and provision of free trees to North Huron residents. I've appended a report from the previous director of REC that gives some detail behind it. And basically, any resident of North Huron could place an order for a free tree. You were allowed one tree if you were in the urban centers, and 2 trees if you were in rural. The trees were purchased by North Huron and provided free of charge. The reason this came forward to the previous council was there were some concerns surrounding the program. First off was the program cost. It was an average annual cost to North Huron of approximately, we'll say $3,400, $3,372 was the running average from 2014 to 2018. But there was also issues surrounding the cost associated with administering the program, the cost of advertising and promotion of the program. There was a fair bit of cost associated with the picking up of the trees because they found that people weren't able to come during daytime hours and pick their own tree up, or they didn't have a vehicle that was suitable for the transportation of the trees. So it ended up becoming a public works function to deliver trees. And then the other final issue that was identified by Pat at the time was that there was, at least in 2016, there was a fairly significant number of trees that were unclaimed, 31 out of 117. So at the time, the direction of council was to put the program into temporary abeyance and see what kind of response we got. Now, I know we're dealing with a 2017 issue in 2019 going into 2020. It's because there's a 1-year overlap with the program. So basically, to work it through, we had to wait till this summer to see if we had any feedback. The front office received approximately 12 calls, they said, just for inquiries surrounding the program. So that being said, there didn't appear to be a very significant outcry for the program. At this point in time, staff is looking for direction because the 2020 program needs to be exercised now. If it's the desire of council to recommit to this program, we basically have to get advertising now so that we can take orders, place them for November for a spring of 2020 delivery. The one thing, aside from, and I hesitate to apply a cost to all of these issues with staff time, really. I think the focus or the concern is that the staff hours that were allocated towards the tree program were not directed to other business. But there is a hard cost of approximately $3,400 that we're looking at. And if it is the desire of council to proceed with this program, in essence, what I'm asking for then is pre-budget approval on that you're committing to a 2020 purchase at this point.
Before I throw this out to council, I just want to go back in time for myself. We had this program running when I was on council before, and it was ironic that I think it was my 3rd year it came up that the trees that were left over, I believe, were destroyed, and yet in East Wallinosh, we have many, many old trees that are being cut down along the side of the road because they've done their time. And I believe it was Ray Hallahan brought it up that we should be planting the excess trees out in East Wallinosh because we need the money to replace the trees that are disappearing. If the 2 councillors from East Wallinosh could just touch on that subject for me, I would appreciate it. And again, we'll open it up to council. Go ahead, Chris.
I understand that's what happened. It's a good idea to plant them along the roadsides. My question was, if I may, how many trees? You said 117. Is that kind of the average?
In all fairness, I got the sense that that was, but this predates me. So I'm just basically running on the data that was included in that report.
We ourselves, we appreciated the trees, and I think $3,400. Well, what's the cost for flowers in town? 20, 30,000, something like that.
Well,
Donna, you'll know.
no,
I wanted the first one.
I think I heard an answer over here.
For flowers.
For each ward.
Oh, okay.
How much was it, Don?
Each ward, 3,500 for each ward. I'll just look it up for you right now.
Okay. Anita, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I think in these times with climate change and people more worried about the environment, I think it's a problem that needs commitment from our township. And with the leftover trees, they went to the cemetery, that's what I read somewhere, or put somewhere for on another time. I think that's a good idea, putting somewhere in these long ashes lines. But I think people will really appreciate having trees accessible. And I would like to, as I don't know if this is something I can say or do, but for all the new people that are coming to the budget subdivision, can we do something by donating them a tree or putting a tree in the front yard or on the side of the street? Can we work with that somehow?
Yep, so we've got options right there. Okay, I'm gonna open it up to council. Go ahead, Trevor.
So we have to understand this program is separate from the rural roads planting. I would prefer, if we're gonna put costs associated with planting trees, and the municipality has if the municipality is cutting down trees, we should invest in the time to replant the tree. Actually, somewhere in the municipality to offset the carbon footprint of the municipality. The concern is that, for 100 people, potentially, less than 100, because we can get 2 in the rural, we're paying more than 3,000. That 3,000 is just the hard cost. We haven't even talked about the opportunity costs here. That the issue is that if we could set aside money for tree planting within the budgets of the municipality, not offer it to the public, but just have a recommendation from council to an initiative that says, for every tree that is removed, it is council's initiative to plant 2. Whatever the case may be, we would get the same benefit than offering it to the public at less administration, in my mind. Because, I can tell you that is a lot of the discussion that predates this council was exactly the question that Councillor Palmer just mentioned. Well, the wards in Wingham and Blythe, we pay for the flowers, but we don't pay for trees in the rural. But we do a different way. So the question is that to make it a flat for the entire municipality as a whole, that says, here's our initiative, here's our carbon footprint initiative, that says whatever we do, for every tree, we're gonna plant 2, or whatever the case may be, that's a council decision. I think if we did that, made that policy, and put that in place, and made sure staff were informed about that policy, I think we'd get further off than offering a tree and finding out that we have to take 40 of them and plant them in the rural, which we're already planting trees in the rural anyways under a different program.
So Sean, could you follow up for those of us that don't understand, because I didn't realize we had a policy for planting trees in the urban, in East Wallanosh through the town.
Thank you, Reeve. And right now, since I've been here, our focus has been on removing trees. We've taken a lot of these old dead ash trees out. So the idea is that we've been, and I think we spoke about it at last budget, we've been trying to reclaim road allowance, get rid of high risk or dangerous trees. Obviously, the next step in this, the evolution of this program is, as Councillor Syke mentioned, to get back out there and start replacing these trees. And I think we've pulled a tremendous number of trees out of the township this year because of the emerald ash borer. within the next year to 2 years, we have to get onto an aggressive replanting.
Go ahead, Kevin.
It's just piggyback onto Councilor Sykes. The three of you, Sean, would this program, or at least the purpose or the thought of replanting the trees, it must fall into some piggybacking onto our requirements for, carbon reduction as a municipality. It seems to me that it fits into so many of the economic, or what do you call that, not economic, not economic, promises that the province has made to reduce, it must fit into 3 or 4 of our requirements somewhere as a municipality.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Nita.
The trees that are planted are not the same trees that you use for around the roads or anything. I thought the trees in the program, like they get for free, were different kinds of trees than or isn't that true?
Through you, your worship. Yeah, now again, I only saw the program exercise 1 year, but you had a choice. There was a number of different types, and we're recommending against ash.
Good point.
For now.
Go ahead, Paul.
Through you, Reeve, would it work that we can do it sort of through the public works and whatnot, and make sure that we do plant, like, let's say 2 trees down, or 1 tree down, 2 up, as Trevor, Councilor said, and make it simpler so that we're not seeing a big cost, that it's done in their time when it can be done, and just run it smoother instead of meeting people and seeing them thrown out the front lawn or whatever.
I'm gonna touch on that a bit and then throw it over to Sean. When we were out doing our tour of East Wallanosh, 2 East Wallanosh councillors and myself, we had purpose to go and look at a few places because of complaints from, let's call it out-of-towners. They took a lot of trees down, so in my mind, and as a person that is actually looking at taking a few trees down, I almost fell over when I seen the price. I would be careful on just saying, put 2 trees in for every one, because they take out a lot of trees that have killed each other off because they're too crowded. We might want to have Sean go back and think about the conversation we've had here and reformulate what he wants to do and come forward with a concept that works for the conversation we're having. Knowing the past with East Wallanosh, like I said, Ray had brought it up that you're taking them all down, but there's nothing replacing them, and where's the windbreak? And the 2 for 1 and the costing. I wonder if we shouldn't just set this, so you understand that we're for it. We're just thinking that there's maybe different things you could maybe challenge to bring back to us and get based on what we're saying today.
Yes, if it pleases council, your worship, we can do that very thing. I would suggest that at budget time, by then I can formulate some sort of a plan or program so that there could be a cost associated with it. We can get an idea of what we're planning to do for next year.
Yeah, and this is good because this is our council putting down a carbon footprint. By replacing these trees that we haven't been, we're again, this council stating that we're concerned about the environment, and we're going to take action on it. So would we be okay as council? Go ahead, Trevor.
So I will make the motion that the tree program as it currently exists will be repealed and direct staff to prepare a new policy for upcoming budget deliberations.
Do I have a seconder? I have Paul. Questions or comments? Last chance. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, you didn't give me a chance to speak before you came down with that motion. I think that, I like the idea of, 2 for 1, or how many for 1, doesn't matter. And it's hard to hard to pick that number because the trees haven't been cut down yet, and they need a year in advance for the ordering. But I still think that it would be a good idea to allow the residents in East Wallanosh the chance, and I'd be one. I want my 2 trees. Give us the chance to order, and just order more for township purposes.
So we have a motion. Can you amend that a motion?
Well, what I'm saying is let staff come back with a recommendation, and this council's gonna have to, we're not deliberating what the policy is. Let Sean come back with a policy that he's heard all of our conversations here tonight.
Yep.
Let him come back with a policy and we can tweak it as it may from there.
This is true, Chris, and you're duly noted, and Sean will take your advice into consideration too, and he'll come back. Okay! Do I have a, what's that? Yep, I want to have a mover and seconder. Do I have a vote in favor? All in favor? Carries, thank you. Sean, you're up next for the airport fuel system. 7.4.2, my friend.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an interesting one and a follow-up to the request for the audit that was brought to council this spring. The audit, as council's probably aware now, having read the agenda, the audit came back and was fairly clear in the fact that the fuel system that we have at the airport is very old. It's showing its age, and because, by virtue of its design, cannot be appropriately inspected to modern standards. For that reason, and we can get into the details very shortly, but just to be right up front, for that reason, staff thought it prudent to discontinue sale of aircraft fuel and issue a NOTAM at the airport. So that was done as, within 24 hours of having received the report, pending further discussion with council. And the reason for that was that once you have the audit in your hand and it's, the recommendation is written as it is presented here, heaven forbid should something have happened, we really, I don't think, would have had any defense whatsoever, because now we know that it's a reasonably uninspected system. So I guess, I mean, it would be rehashing to kind of go over some of the details, the 10,000 liter dual walled or the 4,000 liter dual walled tanks that we have out there. But there are some options in front of council. As staff, I would strongly recommend that we do not use, do not return the existing units into service. I think that would be far more risk than it's worth. The discussion items, though, or some of the options that you have would be A, to upgrade the fuel system to a full card lock system. And as council will recall, the existing system was fairly relaxed in its approach. It was often operated on the honor system and really didn't offer reliable 24-hour fuel service. So a card lock system would get you around that problem. You can discontinue the sale of fuel if council so chooses. And we had talked before, I think the average net profit that we've seen over the last 7 years for fuel sales was $2,700, rounding up. For a cash outlay of about $21,300 over those 7 years. Return on investment is about 12.6 cents on the dollar. And then the third and maybe a little more challenging option that staff was able to come up with would be to look for partnership options surrounding the sale of fuel. You know, to see if specific organizations such as the Cadets or some other organization was interested in some sort of a lease arrangement. That would be a very challenging one to put together, and I'm not sure how successful I would be, but I could certainly look into it if that was a desire of council. I did talk to, excuse me, Edward Fuels, and the one option, as I said, option one was upgrade the fuel system. To upgrade to a full card lock system with smaller tanks. It was recommended, you know, we've got a 10,000 liter tank, which is far too big for the volume that we don't need much fuel. So if we went to two smaller tanks, full card lock system, you'd be looking at a cash outlay of about $126,000, plus or minus. That being said, there are lease options, and by the sounds of it, the lease options would look at something like a 10-year period. So, you know, if council's desire is to keep selling fuel at the airport, you can look at that lease option and really kind of, it's still gonna result in a net increase in overall operational cost at the airport, but it certainly isn't as hard a hit as the $125,000 or $126,000. That being said, with the audit also, for those that looked at the first couple of pages were very interesting. If we are to continue with fuel sales, going on the premise that we lease a new system or something like that, the one area that we really have to get serious about when it comes to fuel sales is training. I included a bunch of attachments with the report, and when you look at the standards associated with training, it's not just a matter of you know, the half-day or one-day refresher course. There's a fairly significant 2-day course just to get us to the point where we would be, you know, really well qualified to train, or to pump fuel, and then there'd be the ongoing training costs associated with it. So I think, just in order to not dwell on this any longer, really, if we are going to look, if council wants me to continue with fuel sales out there, I would recommend that we take a whole different approach, and certainly the training and the inspection requirements surrounding the fuel system have to be taken, we have to have a new approach.
Thank you, Sean. I'm gonna open it up to council now. Questions or comments? I'm gonna ask the first question. If we were to train our staff and yet we've been told the pilots help themselves and we're gonna do a card lock, would we be liable for anything that went wrong if a pilot was filling his own plane up and hadn't trained?
I asked that very question.
Good show.
With the card lock system, there's a bunch of screens that they have to accept that basically state that they understand the requirements for fueling and grounding, and that they're assuming all responsibility for their actions in fueling the aircraft. So it's a disclaimer, much like the screen you'll see in your car that says, "I promise not to look at the nav system while I'm driving."
Go ahead.
Do the users of the airport right now have any other options to get fuel? Like in this area, like the cadets, or can they get their fuel nearby, or do they have to travel very far? Or how do they work?
Through you,
Yes.
Lee. I noticed that the glider program was running on the weekend. I tried to get a hold of the squadron commander today, and unfortunately couldn't reach him, but in our conversations last week, because I did talk to, we did notify Orange, and we talked to the cadets before, or as we shouted them down, he said his option right now, his immediate option, is to fly to Hanover or Goddard to get fuel. He says it interrupts the program for about a 45-minute duration. Apparently that was an acceptable option. In conversation, I made sure he understood that this was a decision of council. But we talked about the possibility of him having fuel delivered in 45-gallon drums for his purposes, and these are things that they may look at if it's the desire of council to discontinue fuel.
Other questions or comments? Well, go ahead, Jeff.
Sean, since the NOTAM has been issued, has there been any decline or any communication from people that are saying they're less, meaning they're only coming here for fuel and they aren't coming here then at all? Like, do we have any sense of numbers or sense, like, a lot of these discussions in previous council and when the airport was in discussion was economic development and the discussion about economic development and what the airport brings. Well, if we're not selling fuel, what has been the impact of not selling fuel? Have we seen any impact to that?
Through you, I haven't got any data to that end, Councillor Syke. I will say that based on the numbers we had, if you factor out the cadets, as they put thousands of movements on a year, I believe our average was somewhere in the neighborhood of under 200, I think it was about 176 movements a year on average. You know, I would expect that that will drop a bit because I'm sure some people were dropping or were stopping in for fuel, but based on status quo, we're not a high volume airport as it is.
Just out of curiosity, the 176, would that be local pilots or somebody hopscotching through the country, or, because I don't believe we have any planes out there right now, and I believe we just have the helicopter company, I think.
That's correct. We don't have anybody that's currently using it as a base that I'm aware of, so I'm sure there's a couple of local pilots. My understanding is most of them are based out of Hanover now.
So, council, decision time. It's a lot of outlay. Should we maybe put this one off till after our, oh, sorry, who had their hand up? Go ahead, Paul.
I just feel the cost is exorbitant for what we're getting, and the training, that'll be ongoing. I just don't see it viable at all, right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Paul. What I was gonna throw out there is I wonder if we should just put this over till we're done with our conversation with Morris Turnberry. The airport is in Morris Turnberry, and they may wanna be some help if they feel it's helping them. Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you. To build on that, I think it's fair to mention to council though that in the next couple of months, you will be seeing a more voluminous report on the airport where I'm trying to capture some of the history, some of the background, and talk about the feasibility studies that were done. I didn't want to mix that in with the fueling because I think this particular issue is a safety, health and safety issue, as opposed to the other much broader discussion.
So I'm gonna recommend to council that somebody put a motion forward, say we put this over for a time based on that, and based on the fact that we don't even have, I think it's called air security. It is in Morris Turnberry, and they've never passed air security. I think it'd be awful tough to go to our constituents and say, we spent $100,000 on a tank and we can't even fly the plane off the runway because somebody put a sidewalk in front of it. We don't have that control at this time. Again, going back to our conversations with Morris Turnberry, this might shed some light on it. So if I could see that type of a motion, just to, what do we got down here for a motion first of all? Okay, so this is just information purposes, so I'm gonna read it. That the council of the township of North Huron hereby receive a report of the Director of Public Works dated September 3rd, 2019 regarding the North Huron, sorry, that was the tree one. That the council of the township of North Huron hereby receive a report of the Director of Public Works dated September 3rd, 2019 regarding the airport fueling operations for information. Do I have a mover? Oh, and I want to add on to that. Did you want to do it? Yeah.
Sorry, but I will add to that motion and further that staff be directed to bring the fueling operation back with the airport, the overall airport feasibility, so that we can make a decision about the overall further down the road.
Thank you kindly. There's the motion. Trevor has a motion and Anita's seconding. All in favor? Oh, sorry, hold on. Chris has a question.
So that, through you, Reeve, Sean, does that mean that it's fueling is, we haven't told it? I guess the report says that it should be, so we're going by the report and it's.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I was going on the premise that I don't believe that it's prudent for us to sell fuel from our existing equipment. If council wishes to incorporate that into the resolution, then that's certainly fine. It gives me more defined direction.
I will add that to the motion as that's a good point from Councilor Palmer.
We're gonna get Carson to read back the motion.
The the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby received the report of the Director of Public Works dated September 3rd, 2019 regarding airport fueling operations for information, and further that staff bring forward options for airport fueling at the time when the future of the airport report is brought forward to council, and further that council
Honors the report.
pardon?
Honors the report.
Yeah, that council discontinues the sale of airport, fueling at the airport.
Okay, so you're okay with the amendment, and you're okay with the amendment? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Sir? Seeing none, I call a vote. All in favor? Carries. Okay, we have no fire department report, we have no building report, childcare department, 7.1 childcare activity report. I'm going to ask Wayne to speak to this one.
Thanks, Your Worship. So, in Belle's absence, this is a report that she has put together, and it's an activity report, but I think just in terms of, there is one action item that is identified here. So just in terms of the report speaks to the daycare center, they're currently in the process of transitioning children from the daycare program into the school system, which I think is important to note. And as they transition children from the daycare into the school system, they're going to the waiting list and they're filling those vacancies. And just as the report indicates, we currently have 77 children on that wait list. So I think that's important to emphasize. In addition to that, staff are working with the ministry. The early on program, which is currently offered at Sacred Heart School, has been moved, or is in the, I believe it's final. It is either final or in the process of finalizing. The early on program is going to be moving into the Royal Oaks building, which is a former Wingham Public School, and then there's going to be 16 additional daycare spaces created up at Sacred Heart. So that's good, and those spaces will be filled as we go forward. In addition, staff are working with the ministry as part of that. There is a playground fence up there. It is small in terms of space available for children for outside. So staff, daycare staff, are working on that to get ministry approvals to enlarge that area and make that space. In addition, there is a letter, we received correspondence from the County of Huron advising that North Huron's child care program, we're going to be receiving an additional $5,837.12. These funds were unplanned. There was no foresight that we would be receiving those funds, and they do need to be incorporated in 2019 budget. So that is one of the motions, part of the motion for council's consideration. And the purpose of those additional funds is to avoid an increase in child care fees for families. And finally, the manager of child care services want to make staff, or make council aware, that she is currently in the process of interviewing and hiring for the position of child care assistant. The position has been vacated twice in the last year. So the manager of child care services and myself have been reviewing that position. We've been looking at, one of the reasons for the vacancy is the workload that's associated with that. The workload that position is to complete within the time that has been allocated to that position. So we're currently, when I say we, the manager of child care service and I are currently looking at that job description and looking at the hours and potentially increasing the hours slightly, not to a full-time level, but we do feel that we do need to increase it slightly to accommodate the workload. The position, job description, and the workload was based on child care services when it was much smaller, and obviously the child care program has grown over the years, so we are looking at that. So there is a motion for council's consideration. I don't know if you'd like to read that then, or?
That the council, well, first of all, is there any comments or questions for Dwayne? He'll do his best to answer. He may have to go back to Val and come back to you, but seeing none, I'm going to read the motion. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of the manager of Child Care Services Activity Report dated September 3rd, 2019. And further, the council authorize the additional funds received from the county at the amount of $5,837.12 to be applied towards the operation costs of the Children's Center. And further, that the Director of Finance be authorized to make the necessary changes to the 2019 budget. Do I have a mover? Oh, sorry.
I think Paul had
Oh, Paul, go ahead.
I was just wondering in there, like, it was mentioned about the workload and the hours are, up the hours. Would anything be wrong, like, it sounded like she wants the 5,800 to go towards what people are paying per day. Is there any chance that that could be moved over to get a worker there and maybe up the cost to the users? Just a thought.
So, Your Worship, so the purpose of the fund is to avoid an increase in childcare fees. That's the wish from the county. That 5,800 will go into the operating expenses of the childcare center. So in terms of how that's used, yeah. Does that answer the question, or do you want those? Maybe I'll leave it at that. And
Maybe to have a conversation with Val, unless you can answer. Go ahead, Trevor.
Well, I can't answer specifically. My thinking is though, is in the fees bylaw, we indicate what the costs to each family are. That fee bylaw gets adjusted every year or every September, roughly around that area. If my impression of this is that fee bylaw won't change. That's my impression. But if we would have to see when that fee bylaw came back to us to see the adjustment. If she's saying the county's looking for it to not increase the fees, then my interpretation would be our fee bylaw for childcare services would remain status quo and nothing would change. If that's not the impression, then I guess we're not going to know until the fee bylaw comes back to council. But at the end of the day, if it goes into operating, it's going to, and the fee bylaw doesn't change, then it's doing exactly what Councillor Heffer is asking. If it does and the fee bylaw goes up, it's also doing the exact same thing as what Councillor Heffer is asking because the users are paying for it. Because they're paying for the extra costs associated with that, but then if they change what the hours of that's part of the operations of the facility. So I think it's going to have to come back to when the bylaw comes to us to see whether that impact of that has really been associated with the fees and bylaws.
So having said that, again, I think Dwayne will get some feedback from Val for all of us, so we're a little secure because we're. Having said that, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I call a motion. All in favor? Oh, I haven't done the mover and second.
Oh, no.
Trevor's gonna move it. Paul's gonna second. Now I'll ask the question. All in favor? Thank you, Tony. Oh, it passed by the way. 7.8.1, former Blythe Lawn tennis property. Dwayne is gonna speak to this.
Thanks, Your Worship. So in 2014, when I say we, North Huron, we acquired the former lawn tennis property in Blythe through the expropriation process. And that process was initiated because there were no living members of the lawn tennis club and there was no clear ownership of the property at that time. Around that same time, the township entered into an encroachment agreement with the Blythe Lions Club because a portion of the Lions brick clubhouse and washroom building sits on the corner of the former lawn tennis property. Due to the shortage of building lots and the need for residential housing, council directed staff to investigate the possibility of severing a portion of the lot for residential purposes. Any future development on that land, if development was to occur, would and does need to take into consideration the needs of the Lions Club. So as authorized by council, staff met with the Blythe Lions Club to discuss their interests and needs. Should council decide to proceed with severing a portion of the Blythe Lions Club for residential development. The Lions Club executive discussed the possibility of residential on a portion of the property, and they submitted the attached letter dated August the 20th. And as per the attached letter, the Blythe Club wishes to submit a written proposal for council's consideration. and a Blythe Club representatives would be pleased to attend the next council meeting to discuss the proposal. So just in terms of the property itself, the property for those is located on Queen Street, adjacent to Huron County Housing Authority apartment building there. The property is currently zoned community facility and designated community facility. So if there was to be any sort of residential development on that property, there would be an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment would be required. In terms of the details of the property are contained there in the report, but I think the point here to note for council is that the property, should council again wish to proceed with the residential portion, you could put 2 single residential homes on that, or you could put a multi-unit development on one multi-unit development, or you could put 2 singles. Given the housing needs, again, if council did decide they want to proceed in that direction, we would recommend from a staff's perspective that you consider a multi-res development, given the housing shortage that we currently have in North Huron. It's important to note that the lot itself is a through lot from Queen Street through to Gypsy. And there is an entrance off of Gypsy that is used to access the Lions Playground and the wading pool, and again, the Lifeline Club has an interest in that. It is a highly visible and accessible site, and there's a lot of potential for that property. If council does wish to consider moving forward in the residential stream, there's some additional next steps that would need to be undertaken to proceed in that direction. But I do note that John is here on behalf of the Lions Club, and I do know that the Lions Club, as per the letter, is interested in making a written proposal for council's considerations, and they would like to attend the September 16th council meeting to present the proposal. So at this point, staff are seeking council's direction.
So with council's permission, and if John, you're willing and able, could you enlighten us a bit on what the Lions Club would be proposing?
Thank you. We haven't carved out our initial proposal in stone at this point. And I should also mention that September 16th, I probably should have added this as part of that sentence, say, or at a future council meeting. Right now, our 39 members are up to their eyeballs and alligators with Thrasher's reunion and stuff. So, but in saying that, we feel that recreation is important to the community, and certainly we support the housing initiative. We know that housing is essential, but we feel that recreation is important. And for several years now, we've talked about doing some type of residential development on that property. We haven't ironed anything out for sure at this time. Over the next couple of weeks, or whenever council would invite us back, if they feel fit to do so, we would iron out what those options would be and what type of proposal we'd be making. I can tell you right now that if you're looking for us to pay market value for the property, we cannot do it. It's just not that type of financial situation. But we do feel we can put a proposal together to work with council that will be recreational involvement and that will be a benefit to our community.
Just so I understand that, the Lions Club is not interested in putting residential up there. You're just more interested in talking to us about keeping a section of it for recreation and working with us, knowing the housing headaches that we have. Do I understand that properly?
Essentially that is correct, although I really would feel more comfortable once we have our proposal in writing that we could submit to council. They'd have a chance to review it and we can discuss it.
Understood. Thank you.
But I guess the short answer is we're not totally in favor of residential development on that property.
Understand. Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead, Trevor.
Based on the information that we've got and the line of request to talk to council, I would make a motion to defer this decision until we see that proposal from the Lions Club, whether it be September the 16th or when the Lions Club is available to present their proposal. They're a stakeholder. I think it's important that we include them as part of the discussion. So I would like to just get a deferral. I'll make a motion to defer it.
Seconder, please. I have Paul. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. So we'll look forward to talking with you in the future.
Thank you
Very much, John. Okay, Dwayne, 7.8.2, Hutton Heights is upon us. Go on.
Thanks. So, at the May 6th council meeting, after much discussion, council did decide to proceed with the necessary studies to advance residential development on the municipally owned Hutton Heights lands. Council received a report of July 2nd, and as a result of that report, authorized staff to proceed with retaining an environmental assessment firm to undertake an environmental impact study on those lands. The reason for that is that environmental impact study is a requirement to move forward with development on those lands. In addition to the environmental assessment, an archaeological assessment needs to be completed on those lands. And you'll note in the report that an archaeological assessment firm has been retained, and that work has been commenced and is currently underway. So in terms of next steps, essentially is what this report speaks to. Staff requested the next step, the next item, I guess, that needs to be looked at would be services, in particular the water main that would be required to service this development, as well as a sanitary. And so staff asked BM Ross and Associates to provide a written price quote to undertake the necessary design work for that water trunk line and the sanitary system extension. And the price quote that we received is attached to the report, and you'll note that the estimated work to complete that is $94,000 plus HST. Again, that is for design work for the water line and for the sanitary. That clearly does not include the cost to put the project itself out to request for proposal, and for sure does not include the cost to construct and install the water line or the sanitary sewer. That estimated cost, the construction installation is based on BM Ross's previous presentation, is $1.8 million. Should council decide that they wish to proceed with the design work, BM Ross and Associates have informed staff that to do the construction and the installation of the water line and sanitary, there is environmental work that needs to be completed. And in light of the fact that we currently have an environmental firm that is currently doing the environmental assessment on the lands themselves, they're recommending or suggesting council give consideration to also have that firm do the necessary environmental assessment work that would need to be undertaken for the water line and for the sanitary sewer system. And as the report indicates, the price quote that we received from the environmental firm is $7,300 plus HST. In terms of other considerations, to prepare the lands for development, a plan of subdivision would be required or is required. And there is a number of items or steps that would need to be completed in order for development to proceed. So in addition to those planning requirements, which does include the environmental assessment and does include the archaeological, there's other studies that would need to be completed to move this development forward. In addition to the planning requirements, the servicing needs to be addressed, which is hence the purpose of this report, in terms of does council wish to move forward with the servicing work, the design work to service these lands. The estimate cost to complete In addition to the planning work that needs to be done, and then the servicing on the water trunk line and sanitary services, there's additional work that we need to be undertaken to the tune of about 3.4 million, and that deals with your internal road system and your water and sanitary lines for the development itself. That said, at some point, council will need to have a discussion in terms of what role they wish to play in the development process, whether council wishes to be the developer, or whether council wishes to take it to a certain point, and then, for example, issue an RFP and invite developers to come in. So you'll notice in the report, I do indicate that a more detailed report on private options versus municipal options in terms of developing the land, we can bring that forward for council's consideration. But at this point, there are no, again, just from a financial perspective, there's no funds allocated in the 2019 budget for the environmental assessment work or the archaeological assessment work. And as authorized by council previously, there was $50,000 in the economic development budget to be transferred to reserves. Of that 50,000, approximately 35,000 has been spent on the environmental assessment, the archaeological assessment work. And in terms of, again, if council does decide to proceed with the design work, and as a cost savings measure, it'd be recommended that you have the environmental work completed for the water line and the sanitary. Out of that 50,000, 35,000 has already been allocated. You could pay for that additional environmental assessment work out of that 50,000. So you'd be up around $43,000 of that 50,000 that would be spent. In terms of BM Ross, their costs of $94,000, Dawn and I were chatting, and that could be funded from the Water and Sanitary Reserve Fund. There are sufficient funds there to pay for that. We recommend though that that cost of $94,000, you'll notice on the price quote, there's a difference in the cost between the water and the sanitary. So we would fund it proportionately from the water and the sanitary reserves. So this is for council's consideration in terms of moving to what we believe to be the next step with this development. After the design work is completed, next step then would be we would do request for proposal and then we'd issue it for tender. And prior to that though, I would suggest we need to have a discussion as council in terms of what role we're going to have in the development process and what role developers are going to have in that process. But to move it forward, design work for the water and the sanitary would be the next step.
Thank you, Dwayne. I'm going to open it up to council now. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Trevor. And then we'll follow up.
I think it's foreseeable that, if we want to get to shovel-ready land, at least to the point where we have the discussion about whether we're going to be a developer or tender it out to say who wants to partner, who wants to buy this thing. Now that we've done all the work and got to the point where it's basically a subdivision agreement, then, here it is. I think we went this far. I think we'd be foolish to stop now. And the fact that it's not really truly costing anything from a budget perspective, the fact that all the money is being absorbed in the budget, either by reserves or by the budget, the transfer of reserves, that I think it only is, in my mind, it's a fact that I think we have to do it in order to continue the process going forward.
And Kevin, you were next.
Yeah, through your reading. Just for curiosity, have we had any intent on those properties yet as to whether it would be one way or the other, whether it would be any interest in that which way was going forward?
We have been contacted, and I can't speak for everything that Dwayne's done, but I've been involved with some developers that would be interested, and also from long-term care people that would be interested in putting the building up there. But we haven't had our preliminary conversations, but we put it out there. in all honesty, if I could keep it local, with local, I've reached out to people like the Royal Homes, I have not had conversations with them yet, but we are a Royal Home town. I'm hoping that it'll be local, so that we don't get ourselves tied up in the mess that A plus A or A1A or whatever, yeah, A2A, the headaches that they're giving us. Having said that, we've started to cross those bridges, but it's a little early to start inviting them to the table. And all the council will be involved when we get into serious discussions with those people where we want to go. This is a big step forward, but again, as you read, I'll hang my hat on it. We need to do it. It has to go through. And it's generations down the road that we'll reap the benefits from it. Having said that, anybody else like to ask questions or comments? Go ahead, Chris.
This is more curiosity through you, Sean. We're doing, A2A's been mentioned here. I was just wondering if there's any, has there been any movement?
Through your worship, so just in terms of, we have been contacted by Doug Searson, I believe is, if I got that name correct.
Yes.
And they're currently in discussions with the owners of this property. The request we received was for information from our files, and we have been able to release to them information that would otherwise be publicly available. So beyond that, I mean, I do know that discussions are underway, and I do know that they do have that information that we provided to them in terms of, you know, what the planned subdivision is, the design. We provide them with things like the stormwater management plan, the lot grading plan, you know, information that was publicly available. We provide them with as much information as we can. So, but do I know the extent of the conversations? Do I know where things are going? I do not.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to read the motion, and it's a lengthy one, so bear with me. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of the CAO dated September 3rd, 2019 regarding the status of the next steps for the Hutton Heights development. And further, that Council authorize BM Ross and Associates to proceed with designing a water main extension and sanitary service system at a cost of approximately $94,000 plus HST. And further, that Council authorizes the design cost to be paid proportionately from the water and sanitary reserve funds. And further, that Council authorizes the scope of the environmental assessment work being completed by NRSI to be expanded to include the identified water and sanitary service corridors. And further, that the Council authorizes the additional environmental assessment costs at approximately $7,300 plus GST to be expended from the transfer to reserves from funds of the economic development budget. And further, that the Council authorizes the Director of Finance to amend the 2019 budgets to reflect these changes. Do I have a mover? I have Christopher, seconder. I have Kevin. Further conversation.
I did, you know, I think, like I said before, I think we need to do it. The one concern that I had is these quotes, as I'm reading the exclusions, are the existing properties out in Hutton Heights. So they're not designing or anything to attach them to the system. The question is that what would that cost be? Because even though we didn't necessarily, at this point, maybe we don't want to include them or not, we don't necessarily know what that design work would be. And if we had to go back and design it after we've done this design work, is that gonna increase delay or what? You know, I'm concerned of the fact that if we exclude certain things, it's gonna cost us later if we want to include them. So, not that I'm saying we are forcing anybody to hook up or whatever in the design, I'm just saying let's design it on fully inclusion, and then if we want to exempt them later, then so be it. I'd hate us first to include it and then say, well, that wasn't part of your design work, here's another 25,000 that now you have to design that part.
That's a good one to bring up, Trevor. And in my conversations with the stakeholders out there, the existing property owners that do not want to hook up yet, in my understanding with BM Ross, and it's a good thing you brought that up because Dwayne can follow up, we were going to run the trunks down the road so that as the wells disappeared or the septics disappeared from the existing houses, they had the right to hook into it. But we are not going to hook them into it. I would rather see us start developing where we can do both sides of the street to start gaining tax money back right away. So that is a good one to bring up and one to check into, but my understanding is we're gonna run the trunk line and the water line down the street. And in the future, should those homes need to hook in, it's available for them. And as Trevor clearly said, they're not being forced to hook into it now. It's at their timing and desire.
Yeah, it just says road and servicing designs for Crawford and road design for Lloyd. So, I don't know if that means, if that means that it's available to them and then it's nothing to connect. I don't know what that entails. I just think we need to clarify that, if we ever wanted to connect Crawford or Lloyd or whatever, that it's not gonna have to have some massive design costs associated if you're already designing it now.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So just in terms of the road design work for Lloyd, that's speaking to the improvements that we require to Lloyd Street?
Yeah,
Right, for the increased traffic?
so that's okay.
So that's not included at this point.
Okay.
They're strictly focusing on the water line and the sanitary. But going back to your point in terms of road and servicing design for Crawford, so it does not include that. So if we want that included, then I can ask for that to be included in the design work that BMOS is doing, if you wish.
Well, I'm just me, I just don't,
Yeah.
I don't see us, if we're already doing the design work, and not whether we're designing, whether we wanna have them inclusive or not, if we wanna have it that they wanna stay on their system, and as if their systems are starting to fail, they wanna connect, so be it, if that's what the decision of council is. But I would hate for us to have to go and design it later, when we're already doing the design for the whole area now. It just doesn't make any sense to me, but I'm not an engineer, and I just look at things common sense wise, but that's not always common.
So to Dwayne's comment, or sorry, to Trevor's comments, can we have them come and have a conversation with council about that exact situation where are they setting that up so that we can quickly hook those up if we need? Because I most certainly do not want to spend $50,000 getting 2 streets ready to go, knowing that I'm not gonna hook this side up. That's kind of what we do with Morris Turnbury. We need to put it down the road that we're gonna hook both sides up so that we can get the tax revenue coming in. We should maybe have them come and have a conversation. Your thoughts on that, Dwayne?
Yeah, so just in terms of the design work that they quoted is to run the water line out 4, down Lloyd Street and to service Hutton Heights. So the design work that they're doing does not include the existing development that's out there.
Oh, okay.
So if we're looking to design it such that we would run the pipe down, I think it's Crawford Street, to service the existing development, then we would just be changing the scope of the design work to include design work of water and sanitary down Crawford Street, for example.
Because we're not running any water and sewer lines into the new subdivision. This is just along the one street to supply the new subdivision.
This is to supply the new Hutton Heights lands.
Okay.
But then there's the road network and the system, the water system and the sanitary system on the lands will depend on the plan of subdivision design that is approved. So that's part of that 3.4 million that's in there,
So that's down the road or something.
right?
Go ahead, Chris.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the other side of Crawford is owned by another individual, is it not? Opposite the established
Yes.
homes is owned by somebody else.
Yes.
So I think it makes a lot of sense, it would be prudent to design it to the end of Crawford, probably both ways. And that might entice that individual to maybe plan some development of his own.
So hearing everything that you've heard today, Dwayne, if you can have that conversation with BM Ross and you can explain to them, and then they can come and give us a better overview, so we have a better understanding, so that we're doing everything properly. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's do that, please. Okay, so we're gonna have somebody come and talk to us about those specifics, so we have a better understanding. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
So what I'm hearing then, are we then deferring this till that discussion, or,
No, I,
so I guess the question is, because the one to the system costs approximately 94,000, are we giving staff some leeway as to what that cost is, to add that to the cost of the quote, is my question.
I was gonna ask Dwayne if he has a thought on
So my understanding is in terms of that so we have a motion, that's currently before council. So we're not, so in terms of, we'll take the vote on that motion. You can tell me, but I think what we're going to do is defeat that motion. And then we're going to pass another motion directing staff to invite BM Ross and Associates to attend council to present or speak to the design work
that. Clarify.
for the water and sanitary. Is that what I'm
Is that-
what I'm understanding, but
Do we want another quote or not? Do we want a quote for what we have right now? Or do we want two quotes, like one for the 94,000 plus CCG and the added like Lloyd and Crawford Street? Can we do
Well,
that?
that's
Can we
another
task
Yeah,
to that?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's just adding Crawford. It's really just adding the Crawford Street part of it, because there's no other development anywhere else other than Crawford. Lloyd doesn't have it, Lloyd's the new road that's going in. So Crawford's the only existing road there that we have, that we're concerned about if there's, and for exactly for Chris's point, is there development on there isn't development on the other side of the road that they may want to connect. So, my thinking is, let's just not necessarily defeat the entire motion. Maybe the part of the motion that we can't really say or accept is the 94,000, because we don't know. It excludes the Crawford Street. So if we wanted to say, get a quote from BM Ross that includes Crawford, but we don't know the number. That's the problem that the council has today, that we don't know, what are we authorizing? We don't know the number.
So if I could just touch on that, so the people we're talking about do not want to hook up to it, and they're settled the way they are. So if we ever run a water and sewer trunk down Lloyd Street, the way this is what we're doing right now, if they want to hook into that later, then 10 years or 15 years down the road, we would simply just simply put a trunk in each side and run off the existing trunk that we're talking about for the 94,000. Is that, do I get that right, Sean? So we're delaying something for something that could happen 10 or 20 years.
No.
They will have the right to hook into it.
No, but what I'm saying is, we're already designing the system.
Mhm.
So if you're gonna delay, it's not just a matter of, look, there's the pipe, and now they just draw two lines and put more pipe in. They're gonna have to design it.
Okay.
So I'm saying, design it now.
So let's defeat this motion, right? Let's defeat this, go ahead.
So you can either defeat the whole motion, or you could amend this motion, if Chris was the mover, if he's okay with that, to include what Trevor has suggested.
Yeah, I think we just add to the part where it says authorize BM Ross to proceed with the design of the water main extension and servicing at a cost of approximately 94,000. We add that it is to include Crawford Street in the quote. And if it's, I don't think, even if it's 125,000, I don't think we wouldn't do it, because we're gonna have to pay for it later if we wanna develop it.
Yep.
So I think we just leave it at that, and let and maybe just take the 94,000 out, because we can't authorize 94,000, because if it goes above 94,000, they gotta come back anyways. So I don't know whether that you would have the quote by the next meeting to if we even approve this one, you could come back to the next meeting and say, we've got the new quote, it's now additional 15,000, here's another motion that you need from council to accept it. I'm wondering how fast this is gonna go.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Trevor, I just have some concerns with that, because here's the way it reads. And further, the council authorizes BM Ross Associates to proceed with designing a water main extension sanitary service system at the cost of approximately $94,000. If we take the cost out, we just open the floodgates up.
No, what I'm saying is, what I'm asking Dwayne, as always part of my question, is if we leave the 94,000 in and say to include the Crawford Street development, if Dwayne now asks BM Ross to give us that cost, because he's got authorization for 94,000 for the whole lot. If he comes back with a quote from BM Ross that now it's 120, he's got to come back to council in 2 weeks to give the authorization for the extra 30.
But I just want to be very clear on something. He doesn't have the whole lot. He's just doing one street for that money. Am I right on that? He's not designing or putting anything in the new subdivision. This is just to run a main trunk down one street for 94,000. So later on, when you do your subdivision, you can include that, because we're not, and that could be a contractor that we're gonna be dealing with. Right now, this money and this deal is only to run the water and the water from Wingham out to Lloyd Street and straight down Lloyd Street. It has nothing to do with branching off into Crawford or anything else, or any of the new subdivision. On the other hand, what I'm hearing Trevor saying is you want to make sure that line they're running will take on Crawford Street. Did I do that right, Trevor?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that we're designing the function already.
Yep.
We're designing it so not only does the North Huron land have the ability to connect to the system, but the land that currently has no water or sewer, that it could be developed by privately owned people.
Yep.
They could then connect. And if he wants to connect, we've already got the design work
Yep.
completed.
Yep.
Therefore, yes, we're still gonna have to partner or do something as to get all the pipes in the ground for that connection.
Yep.
But at least it's designed. We're not going back to the drawing board and designing it again.
Go ahead, Nita.
And if he doesn't want to hook up to the system, we put a lot of money in for nothing.
But we don't know what that money is.
No,
So what
we
I'm
just
saying
want to
is,
have quote, yeah, so that's
Yeah,
why,
so-
yeah.
so what I'm saying is, we give this 94, if we ask the quote to include Crawford, and Dwayne comes back to us in 2 weeks and says, well, to add that part of it is $50,000,
Yeah.
and you've now had 2 weeks to think about it again, as I will, and we say no, well then BM Ross isn't going to include it because it's not going to cost them at all.
So, we have what you're saying in a motion. Let's see how this comes across.
That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby received the report of the CAO dated September 3rd, 2019 regarding the status and next steps for the Hutton Heights development, and further that Council authorizes BM Ross and Associates to proceed with designing the water main extension and sanitary services at a cost of approximately $94,000 plus HST, and further that the CAO be directed to report back with the additional costs to include Crawford Street in the design work quotation for Council's consideration, and further that the costs authorized Then further that council authorizes the design cost to be paid proportionally for the water and sanitary reserve funds, and further that council authorizes the scope of the environmental assessment work being completed by NRSI to be expanded to include identified water and sanitary services corridors, and further that council authorizes the additional environmental assessment costs of approximately $7,300 plus HST to be expanded from the transfer to reserves fund of the economic development budget, and further that council authorizes the director of finance to amend the 2019 budget to reflect these changes.
I think it's exactly what I was envisioning.
So you put the motion forward?
I didn't put the motion forward.
Put the motion
Councilor
forward.
Palmer.
Can you accept the
agree.
amendment? And who seconded?
Councilor Palmer.
And can you accept the amendment? Okay, with the accepted amendments, any further questions or conversations? See, you've already read it off, you did a good job. I call the vote, all accepting it. It passes, thank you very kindly. Okay. We're gonna now step down to correspondence. 8.1, Wingham BIA letter requesting permission to install the LED lights. Sean, could you speak to that?
So I actually can,
Okay, my friend.
I said on BIA, so what the BIA is looking to do is install, an LED sign at where the Community in Bloom sign is today, at the corner of 86 and 4, on that land right beside the Wingham sign. The intention of that sign is to promote BIA initiatives. I clarified with Doug, the chairman of the BIA, that it is not intended at this particular purpose to sell advertising as the Lucknow Chamber, the North Park Chamber of Commerce does on their LED sign beside their so they originally thought, because it was on 486, that they needed the county to approve it. That took a long time for the county to tell them, no, you don't. So now they're coming back to North Huron Council and saying, are you okay with us proposing this BIA sign, this LED sign on that, and at a cost of, I think they've got a cost in their budget as one of their plans for the reserve funds. So as reserves build up, they're planning on putting the reserve money to this initiative. So, that's what I know of it, and I know Doug, and the BIA had come, I think it was to the previous council originally, and then they thought they needed county approval, so they went to the county and then found that they didn't need county approval,
So Trevor, we're not looking for a motion tonight, this is just information purposes, or what
well,
are we
they're
looking for?
they're looking for the BIA, or they're looking for, not really council, but they're wanting them to know that we're gonna get, they're asking for the purpose of the sign. At this point, they're not, I guess they're not asking for, a motion of the council at this point. I haven't seen one, but my impression of the letter that came, that the BIA was talking about, was they're looking that if council's accepting of the location and what this is, they would give direction that it's okay to go ahead and do it.
So I have somebody whispering in my ear telling me that we should be giving them a motion, that we should put a motion of council supporting this, if we wish to. So Trevor, as the BIA rep, would you like to put that motion forward? And then they know they can, if I understand this right, then they know they can fund
And
towards
they
it.
can proceed with
Yeah,
it as they
yeah.
do. So I have no problem with the initiative.
Okay, so we have a motion to support the BIA in their letter, the LED sign. Do we have a seconder? Paul is a seconder. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Nita.
Is this on solar power, or how does it work, those signs, do you know that?
I don't know, I suspect, knowing the BIA, they're probably gonna be doing something to that effect, that it's gonna be some cost neutral function, but I don't know that answer. I can take that back to the BIA meeting on Thursday.
Okay, and the sign that is there, like the Communities in Bloom, that's what, are they
Yeah,
putting it
so-
somewhere else now?
No, so the impression that I got from the BIA is the Communities in Bloom sign is in not real good shape. It's been there for a long time. It's not necessarily providing, it's something that's been 15 or 20 years old. So I think they're looking that it would be in that location and that sign would be removed. But I don't know that specifically. I can ask that question with the BIA.
And at the same time, I have Sean here letting me know that he'd like to speak to this.
Thank you, Rick. Just one small comment. Now if council is in support of this initiative, I think next step would be to meet with probably Mr. Kyvenhoven to confirm the location and, understand orientation. There's one small concern, and I want to make sure we put it behind us before they get too far along, and that is these active LED signs have certain guidelines surrounding them, especially in relationship to intersections.
The light, that's right.
It's something that's trying to catch your attention, so I've yet to come across it, I've heard discussion around it, and I will, once I know that council's in support of this, I'll more aggressively, try and get to the bottom of it, just so that we don't get into a.
So what I would say is that's one of the reasons why they went to the county. Because they thought because of the 486 intersection, they thought they needed county approval because of the intersection lights. But the county's saying it's up to the municipality to decide. Reeve, Vicky is.
Vicky, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, your worship, just further to Sean's comments, I had experience back in Wilmot with dealing with the MTO with Highway 7 and 8. I don't know if they come into play here, but there are restrictions on those types of signs from intersections that comes from the MTO, but I don't know what their role, being in here, not sure what their role is with that intersection. So, yeah, Sean, does sounds like Sean doesn't believe there is any, but I know there were minimum setbacks that were required.
Yeah, I think, I think the BIA is interested in the fact that if council is in support, that they will do the legwork to talk to whoever they need to talk to in order to make it work. I think at the end of the day, they're looking for somebody to give them the support that they can at least move the, they're not gonna go through all the hoops and say, then council's saying, no, I'm not able to do it. If council's in support of it, they will talk to the MTO or help Sean or divine the sign policy, whatever the case may be. I think they're willing to help with that, it's just a matter of what that looks like. So I can take that information back to the BIA, just to let them know that, if council is in support of it, that, Vicky as well as Sean will be in touch, potentially in touch with them in regards to MTO and sign bylaws and a whole bunch of other things that they need to be aware of, I think.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm gonna call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Reeves activity report is next. Well, it's been a little bit busy little time, this last couple of weeks or month, whenever we last met. The annual conference we went to, and I'm glad I went to the conference. I gotta be honest, when I first got into this, I thought these conferences were a waste of money and time. It's the second one I've gone to. I've met a lot of people and talked to a lot of people and come up with a lot of ideas, and I've met a lot of government people that I will be talking to my staff with about helping us support financially what we're doing and the way it works with the Ford government. At the AMO conference, I was part of a delegation with the county. Myself, Bernie McClellan, and Reeve Jim Ginn got to speak to Steve Clark about the headaches of trying to put housing in our area. The headache of somebody grabbing the land and hanging on to it for 10 years. Again, this isn't news for us, so I felt it was a very good meeting. I felt somebody was listening, and quite happy with the response we got from Steve, Mr. Clark, leaving the room. And he did ask me at that room, he did have the three of us, ask us what we did with the money they gave us 5 or 6 months ago. And I said, we did not spend it on trucks or computers. We are going to use it for development to try to slow our taxes down, and you need to help us with development by getting regulations out of the way. So that's why it's very difficult for me to switch to me. Also, we had a meeting with the infrastructure, Minister of Infrastructure couldn't be there. Jennifer Bell was there on the Blythe Theater. And we brought the whole team down for that. There was Rick and Paul and myself and Dwayne and Gil and Jennifer from the Blythe Theater, and we really pushed the idea of exposing the Blythe Theater and what a great opportunity it is for North Huron. And at the end of our conversation, we all got to talk. It was a great team effort. The nice lady on the other side said, well, I know where Blythe is. My parents have year-round tickets for it. Now, you can't get any better than that, now can you? So, it was quite a good time. It was a good experience, and we learned a lot, and I suggest anybody that hasn't been to one should take the time and consider going to one. It's a long time to be away, but it was well worth it. And that's it for the Reeves report. I know you guys want me to battle along for at least 45 more minutes. So let's go to council reports. which would be council members, verbal or written updates on members who sit on boards or committees. Anybody else like to talk? Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Ruth. The past Blythe Business Improvement meeting we had, there was a request brought forward to start a conversation. They'd like to extend a welcome out to their next meeting to either someone that can come and speak to we're trying to get a traffic and parking strategy that's going to work for Blythe, where we're not clogging up the streets that trucks can't get through, and in tying in with the new parking, or the new crosswalk. Just trying to find a solution as to not just move the parking problem to the next street over if you put no parking on here, or make no parking on one side. Just to start a conversation of how some of the town's problems that we're having with parking during the theater on the side streets. Just to start a conversation, whether that would be, whether that would be for Sean to talk to, just to listen to their concerns and just try and go forward.
I'm gonna throw that out to Dwayne and Sean. I know I wanna come to one of your meetings, but I am booked for something else while you're having your next meeting, so I can't make it. But I have talked to Dave and I will be to them. I wanna start.
This doesn't necessarily have to be the next meeting, it was just putting out an invite to start the conversation.
So I'm gonna throw that over to Sean and Dwayne, and they will get back to you and come up with a, totally agree, parking is difficult.
And I'm glad to see the women BIA is getting some of the knots figured out for their signs. I think maybe Blythe like to go out to it. I've heard conversations and we're trying to get people to come to town from that forward.
Anyone else? Anita?
Yeah, Maiden Valley had their meeting August 22nd. They're very concerned with the letter from the province environmental minister asking the province outside their core mandate be closed, and meanwhile funding for natural hazard has already been cut 50%. Their concerns are there are no details about the mandatory programs and services. There was no discussion before this letter. The province only contributes 8% to the Conservation Authority's total budget, and the Conservation Authorities need time to consider all the implications that are putting towards them. They're not supposed to make their levies higher to the municipalities, but there was no discussion about what's going on with the ministers. They were expecting something in November, and August 16, they all of a sudden got a letter like, this is what you have to do, and you have to work towards it without any discussion or communication going on. So that's what we're working on. It's very concerning.
It is, especially the way that happened.
Yeah, the way it happens.
The way that happens is rather shocking.
That's very correct.
Yeah. Anyone else? Seeing no one. Comments by members, anything anybody would like to discuss? Go ahead. Chris.
Yeah, it's just sort of maybe putting a bug in someone's ear, or all of our ears. We're talking about housing, and it's from upper tiers, they're telling us that it's gotta be kind of this, and this, which is fine. But has anyone, like you've mentioned some people that you've talked to, developers, and maybe there's agencies out there, has anyone ever, we're trying to get people in here for work. So has there ever been any surveys done by such people, or about such people, as to what kind of houses or homes they'd like to have? Or dwelling places?
That's a good point. I know we haven't as a council staff. I'm not sure if Huron County has. I could follow up with that. We could follow up at the next meeting. Well, Dwayne's gonna speak
No,
to this.
Your Worship, just in terms of at the AMO conference, there was a presentation by an individual who did speak extensively to housing in terms of, but it was the housing market in Toronto, Vancouver, and what the market was demanding, and prices and that. No, but just in terms of the detail, I guess, but what I personally observed was the trends that's happening in the housing market. And that may be worthwhile for us to look into in terms of what's what they have observed based on their research, but no, we haven't done anything.
Because we certainly don't want to start developing dwelling places that are not acceptable.
I'm gonna switch over to Carson here now.
Through your worship, so in a couple meetings from now, Barbara Hall from the county is going to be here for a delegation, so, if council would like, I could reach out to her to see whether the county has looked into anything in that regard. She might be able to speak to that in her presentation.
Should be asked that, so it'd be nice if she knew what's coming.
I believe she has a 3-year building project, and I want to be a part of that, so that's good timing to bring that out. No, my vision for this is not $600,000 houses, although believe it or not, the cheapest house you can build right now runs in at $325,000, and that's without a finished basement. That's plain Jane. So I think we're looking at what I would call row houses, and we need to have conversations with people like the Royal Homes, because they're actually building, again, I'm not sure of the proper terminology, but 6-plex, 12-plex. I think we need to look at second and third story. I think we really need to think outside the box when we're looking at developers, and utilize the spaces as well as we can. But I definitely do not see Hutton Heights as let's throw a bunch of $1 million houses out there. We're looking at the working class, the entry-level working class people is who we need, according to the meetings I'm having with the industry, with the people that are looking for people for work. We know what their wages are, and they can't afford $500,000. So we as a council need to head our subdivision towards the working class people.
And you have to define that type of dwelling that they
Yes.
require.
Yeah.
And I've never been pushing these 500s or $1 million houses, but we don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't want us to develop the wrong ones or too many of one type we are even mistake.
Absolutely, yeah. No, we're gonna do our homework very thorough, all of us. Anyone else? Seeing none? Notice of motion, we have none. Other business, motion, Councilor Palmer, that the council direct staff to investigate all North Huron owned properties for sustainable development purposes. Do you want to expand on that a bit, or
Yes,
did you want to talk to it, or? Go ahead.
Yes, please. Yeah, it's kind of self-explanatory, but after being presented with those maps, a month ago or so of our wards, and it certainly, it showed all these land holdings or properties that the corporation owns. And, that was news to me, some of them. So I think it'd be prudent for us to ask staff to sort of catalog them, give us an inventory of their different potential uses, whether it's development or sale or something else.
So could we just take that as instruction, or do you want a motion for that?
Sure. He has a
I mean,
motion.
it's a motion.
Okay, so do you want to put the motion forward?
So you read it.
Oh, that was your motion.
Yeah.
Chris,
Chris moved it. I'll second it. Any other further questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Passes. So that would mean that this is your motion, Trent. That the council direct staff to review the youth-friendly community initiative and provide a timeline as to its implementation. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, so I do apologize to council. I sent either late last night or way early this morning, the youth-friendly community initiative, the webinar that I attended, that I talked to at Roma with them. This is really in regards to youth-friendly, designated it being youth-friendly. So you've got youth initiatives within the municipality. There's lots of criteria that establish this. So and that's why I'm saying, like, there's a deadline of, I think 2020 is January 1st of 2020 is when this current application session. I'm not suggesting that in any shape, what I'm suggesting is this is an initiative that I ran on that I think is important that we have some type of youth initiative within the municipality that this council supports, that we can, like youth council, something to that effect. These are examples of initiatives that other municipalities have, and Goderich is one of them, that they are a youth-friendly initiative community. So, I'm just suggesting we give staff direction to review it and bring back an implementation of when they think they can implement it during this council term. That's only my motion as it reads. That's what I'm expecting.
Do I have a seconder? I have Anita for a seconder. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Anita. And then Chris.
Those programs, the implementation, who is leading, is that all the programs the municipality does in the recreation department, or how?
Some of them are rec departments, some of them are
They're
council.
existing programs.
Well, they not
could
be.
be.
They could be.
Yeah.
They could be. They don't necessarily have to be. Like I know, for example, youth council discussion. That was a new thing in Goderich. Trevor Bazinet was the one who spearheaded that as it relates to Goderich. I've talked to him a little bit about it, but that was an initiative that he brought in. On top of it was already a youth-friendly initiative already. So, I think, and I've had a little bit of conversation with Vicky, and Vicky has had there is some people in Wilmot, I believe, who's had some experience in this, that council will be brought some information more regards to the webinar is really high level. There can be more things that come to it. So my thought is just, provide some more information to council, possible implementation plan, and then let council decide whether they truly think this is truly a good initiative, or it's something that they aren't really keen on.
I saw that South Huron had it too, and I thought maybe it's a good idea to have a delegation from them, because they were like similar, like a city and a country, so they have maybe the same challenges as we will have. Is that something?
So here it depends who we would need to speak because their council meetings are us.
Yes.
Oh, it's just an idea, it doesn't have to be something.
They could provide us a report.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
So I have a seconder.
Don't
Go ahead, Chris.
I read your email. It sounds very interesting. So you suggested go to Dropbox, correct?
Well,
I tried that and then I didn't know what to do.
so there's a link. There's an actual link to their actual website. Like the email that I sent you, below there's a email from the actual representative from Youth Friendly Initiative, and there's a link to their actual website. So I can go back and try to send it to you again, just so it's the link, it's just the webinar, so you don't have to search for it.
That'll be good.
But it's just the webinar that I reviewed that before I made the motion, as well as I had talked to them at Roma in January.
Yes, Trevor, Councilor Site, would you tell me the age group from them that you're honing in on approximately? Just curious, like how long you said youth. But
I'm in my mind, I'm honing in on people of the age of between 10 and 18.
thank you.
That's in all honesty, that's who I'm looking to gain some interest from, because we don't really get anything from them when it relates to council. The people who are over the age of, I'm not saying people over 18 are youth. I'm just saying that that's not something that is an initiative in my mind. I think 10 to 18 would be a good target audience in my mind.
Actually, would you work with the youth center up here? The two of them work together, or is something separate?
What I'm saying is the application process could be anything, and I'm not pigeonholing anything. And I think this is a lot of the questions that Vicky is probably more attuned to me than I am.
Vicky's going to give us a bit of a heads up here. Go ahead, Beck.
Through your worship, we did go through this process in Wilmot, What it is you have to basically demonstrate that you are a youth-friendly community. So part of that is programs that are offered by municipality, but it's also reaching out to the community and finding out what's going on and demonstrating that the community overall is friendly for youth. And so then that's going to involve talking to your minor sports organizations, your community groups, your churches, any type of, the library, any type of initiative or endeavor. We have to prove that we're a youth-friendly community in order to receive that designation. Okay, so it's not solely based on us, however, it is a big project. And I believe it was one of my former staff that did that presentation at Roma, because I contacted her as soon as Trevor had made contact with Wayne, and she kind of chuckled about it, and she said she was the one that was there. And things, I have been in discussions with them about bringing her out and even having her do a presentation to council, and I talked to my former boss as well, and he was okay with doing that to bring it forward. But in Wilmot, we did have a youth council. We had a junior youth council and a youth council. We didn't have a different term like a senior youth council, but we did have that when we initiated that whole designation process and things. But that was something that came out of the master plan that we had done, and because youth wanted to have a voice at the table with council and things. The initiative for the youth council was really well received. It was an interesting process because the kids that we thought we would attract to the youth council, what we would have seen as the leaders at the high school and in the different organizations were not the kids that came out. It was the kids that were not involved in those other organizations, and it gave them an opportunity to get involved in something and do things in their community. And the program, the youth center program itself, or youth council program, involved them actually running programs for their peers, for the community. We had expanded it so that they were actually doing volunteerism with community groups and things, and we coordinated that part of it so that they could get their 40 hours and things. And one of the most successful things that they had done was they started doing a family movie night at year-end for themselves and the community. So it was geared for all age groups and families, and it was actually, last year it was held on the front lawn of Castle Kilbride. They had over 400 families there. And so there was a lot of momentum building, but what you do is you mentor those kids into leadership roles and things. So you do have a staff person that is facilitating the youth council itself, but you teach them and you mentor them and give them responsibilities and things. And then they started taking initiatives themselves, and they were motivated to get involved in their community and do more work and things and get involved. And it was a really good initiative. But that would be one component of it. So that's just one initiative, but to be recognized or designated, it involves involvement from the whole community from one end to the other, and demonstrating that we are a youth-friendly community.
So, any other further discussion? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. The bylaws now. Bylaw 12.1, bylaw number 38, 2019. A land lease agreement between the Township of North Huron and Bill for Steve for the lease of two land parcels on Reed Road landfill, 86165 Curry Line. Do I have a mover? Anita, seconder. Trevor, all in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 12.2, bylaw number 84, 2019, a land lease agreement between the Township of North Huron and Robert Warwick for the lease of the land at Hutton Heights and Wingham in the Wingham Sewage Lagoon. Do I have a mover? I have Trevor, I have Paul seconding, all in favor? Carries. Land lease agreement between the Township of North Huron and Robert Warwick for the lease of the land of the Wingham Airport. This is bylaw number 85, 2019. Do I have a mover? I have Anita. Seconder is Paul.
Question.
Yep.
We decided to roll that one over from year to year, right, or from contract to contract. It's not mentioned that in the contract, it just talks about a 5-year. Yeah, the Article 1 is just a 5-year lease for the land. So are we handling it properly?
I'm going to turn that over to Sean.
Yes, thank you, your worship. Yes, basically, when council directed us to just roll it into a new contract, we created a new contract. And if there's no reference to the past rollover or anything like that. It's a brand new contract, and it does incorporate the option for annual termination based on direction.
Yeah, so it keeps going until somebody decides, no.
Right.
Good.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I call the vote. Passed. Bylaw number 86, 2019. A development agreement with Brian Wellstead and Brenda Wellstead for a temporary dwelling. Do I have a mover? I have Trevor, seconder. I have Kevin. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Number 13 are the announcements. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, September 16th, 2019 at 6 o'clock here at the Chambers. The next Blythe BIA meeting is held on Wednesday, September 4th at 8 a.m. at the Blythe District Community Center. The next Wingham BIA general meeting will be held on Thursday, September 5th, 2019 at 8 a.m. at the Hot Stove Lounge at the West Cass Community Complex. The next Housing Bridge Dam Committee meeting will be held Wednesday, September 11th at 4 p.m. here in the North Huron Council Chambers. The next Huron Economic Development Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, September 12th at the Blythe District Community Center at 8 a.m. The next Huron County Museum Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, September 19th at 2 p.m. here at the Chambers. And closed session reporting out, we have none, so we're going to go to confirmatory bylaw. Bylaw number 87-2019, being a bylaw of the Township of North Huron to confirm the September 3rd, 2019 actions of the Council of Township of North Huron. That the bylaw 87-2019, being a bylaw to confirm September, repeating myself, 3rd, 2019 action of the Council of Township of North Huron be introduced and read first, second, third, and finally time, signed by the reading clerk and engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin. Seconder is Chris. All in favor? Carries. Adjournment that the Council of Township of North Huron agrees that there be no other further business before council. The meeting hereby adjourns at 8:45. Do I have a mover? Anita. And Kevin seconds. All in favor? That's all she wrote.